The letter trembles in my hands, the familiar letterhead of Parker Industries mocking me after 5 years of silence. My father's signature, once a symbol of authority that made me cower, now looks desperate and shaky. I almost laugh at the irony. I'm Lexi, and the last time I saw my father, he was throwing my engineering degree in my face, telling me I was dead to him. All because I refused to marry the son of his business partner, choosing instead to pursue my dreams of becoming an engineer. You're really going to open that? Ben asks, peering over my shoulder. His presence steadies me, as it has since we met in graduate school. I have to know, I whisper, tearing the envelope. The words blur together at first, but certain phrases jump out. Dire circumstances, need your expertise, family legacy at stake. My father, the mighty Brian Parker, is begging for my help. Well, Ben's voice is gentle. He knows what this means to me. He's desperate, I say, dropping the letter on our kitchen counter. The company's failing. He needs an engineering expert to salvage their new sustainable energy project. And naturally, he comes crawling to you now. Ben's usually kind face hardens. He was there to pick up the pieces after my father disowned me. The memory floods back unbidden. An arranged marriage, Lexi. Do you know what this alliance could mean for our family? My father's voice had boomed through his study. Instead, you waste your time with this engineering nonsense. It's my life, I had screamed back. I won't let you sell me off like property. His face had turned purple. Then you are no longer my daughter. My Aunt Nancy's call interrupts my thoughts. I assume you got the letter, she says without preamble. How bad is it really, Aunt Nancy? She sighs. Worse than he's letting on. Zane Ross is circling like a vulture, looking to hostile takeover. Your sister Valeria is trying to help, but... She trails off. Val, she's involved now? She's trying to follow in your footsteps, actually, taking night classes in business. Your father doesn't know. My heart clenches. Val was just 18 when I left, watching wide-eyed as I was cast out. Now she's secretly fighting the same battle. There's more, Nancy continues. The Sustainable Energy Project? It's revolutionary. If it fails, hundreds of jobs will be lost. This isn't just about your father anymore. I press my forehead against the cool window of our apartment, watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. He had 5 years to apologize, Aunt Nancy. 5 years to acknowledge he was wrong. I know, sweetheart, but maybe this is your chance, not just for revenge, but to change things, really change them. An idea begins to form in my mind. The engineering department is still all men, isn't it? You know your father. Women are too emotional for technical work. She mimics his gruff voice. What if, I turn to Ben, who's listening intently, what if I could save the company and force him to create opportunities for women in STEM? Ben's eyes light up. Make him put his money where his mouth is? Exactly. A scholarship program for women in engineering, mandatory diversity hiring quotas, real lasting change. He'll never agree, Nancy warns. He will if he's desperate enough. I pick up the letter again, determination replacing the hurt. Tell him I'm coming home, but he better be ready for my terms. Lexi, Ben starts, concern in his voice. I know what I'm doing, I assure him, though my hands shake as I reach for my phone to book a flight. He wanted a dutiful daughter who'd sacrifice herself for the family business. Well, he's about to get exactly what he wished for, just not in the way he expected. Want me to come with you? Ben offers. I shake my head. I need to do this alone, but keep your phone on. I might need your expertise when I start digging into their technical problems. As I pack my bag that night, I find my old family photo. We look happy, Dad, Val, and me. Mom had just died, but we were still holding it together. before status and tradition became more important than his daughter's happiness. "I'm not coming home to forgive you, Dad," I whisper to his smiling image. "I'm coming home to show you exactly what your engineering nonsense can do. And this time, you'll have to watch as your daughter dismantles your precious patriarchy, piece by piece." I zip up my suitcase, my heart racing with equal parts anticipation and dread. Tomorrow, I return to face my past. But this time, I'm not the scared 23-year-old he threw out. This time, I'm the one with the power to save or destroy everything he holds dear. And God help him if he tries to stop me. The Parker mansion looms before me, exactly as imposing as I remember. My Uber driver whistles as he helps with my luggage. "Nice place." I force a smile and tip him generously. The front door opens before I reach it, and there's Val, practically bouncing with nervous energy. "Lexi!" She throws herself into my arms, and for a moment, I'm transported back in time. She still smells like strawberry shampoo. "I can't believe you're really here." "Look at you," I say, holding her at arm's length, all grown up. She's dressed in a crisp business suit, so different from the teenager I left behind. "Ms. Parker." Thompson, our old butler, appears behind Val. His eyes are warm despite his formal tone. "Welcome home." Home? The word feels foreign now. "Where is he?" "In his study," Val answers, her excitement dimming. "He's been there all morning." "Of course he has. The same room where he disowned me. How fitting." "Let's not keep him waiting then." I straighten my blazer and follow Thompson through the familiar hallways. Family photos line the walls, but I notice all traces of me have been removed. Classy dad. Val grabs my hand. "He's different now. The company troubles have aged him." "Good," I mutter, then immediately regret it when I see her face fall. Thompson knocks on the study door. "Sir, Ms. Lexi is here." "Enter." My father's voice sends an involuntary shiver down my spine. I squeeze Val's hand once, then let go. This is my battle. He's standing behind his desk, and Val's right. He looks older. Gray hair has replaced the black, and deep lines crease his face. But his eyes are the same. Cold, calculating. "Lexi," he nods stiffly. "Father." I remain by the door, arms crossed. "Quite a letter you sent." He clears his throat. "Yes, well, desperate times." Clearly. I walk to his desk, placing my palms flat on its surface. "Let's skip the small talk. Show me the numbers." He bristles at my tone, but slides a folder across the desk. I flip through it, my stomach dropping. It's worse than Aunt Nancy suggested. "The Sustainable Energy Project?" I ask. "Bleeding money, technical issues we can't solve, and Zane Ross is circling like a vulture, I know." I close the folder. "I can fix this." Hope flickers in his eyes. "You will help?" "For a price." His jaw tightens. "Name it." I pull out a document from my briefcase. "My terms, non-negotiable." He reads, his face growing redder with each line. "This is outrageous. 50% of new engineering hires must be women, a multi-million-dollar scholarship fund for women in STEM, mandatory diversity training, and I want full control of the Sustainable Energy Division." I add calmly. "No interference." He slams the paper down. "You're using our crisis to push your feminist agenda." "No, Father. I'm using your crisis to drag this company into the 21st century. Sign it or I walk." "You wouldn't." "Try me." I meet his glare. "I'm not that scared little girl anymore. I'm the best in my field and you know it. That's why you called me." Val steps forward. "Dad, please, we need her." He whirls on her. "Stay out of this, Valeria." "No." Her voice is firm. "I won't. Lexi's right. This company needs to change. I'm tired of being the only woman in board meetings, of being patted on the head and called sweetheart by men twice my age. I stare at my sister with newfound respect. She's grown a backbone while I was gone. My father sinks into his chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. You've thought this through, haven't you? 5 years of thinking, I reply. Sign it and I start tomorrow. Don't, and I'm on the next flight out. Your choice. The silence stretches. Finally, he picks up his pen. You're as stubborn as your mother was. Thank you, I say, watching him sign. It's the first compliment he's given me in years. He slides the contract back. The guest room is ready for you. No need. I'm staying at a hotel. I gather my things, tucking the signed contract safely away. I'll be here at 8 tomorrow morning. Have the engineering team ready. At the door, I pause. Oh, and Father? Next time you see Zane Ross, tell him his vulture days are numbered. Val follows me out. That was amazing. But are you sure you don't want to stay here? I hug her tight. Baby steps, Val. Besides, I pull back with a grin. I have a feeling Dad's about to learn just how emotional women engineers can be. As my taxi pulls away, I text Ben. Phase 1 complete. Time to show them what we can do. His reply comes instantly. Give 'em hell, babe. Oh, I plan to. This is just the beginning. 8 a.m., and I'm already drowning in technical specifications. The engineering team, all men of course, stare at me like I'm an alien species as I pace the conference room. So, let me get this straight. I tap the whiteboard where I've mapped out their current system. You're losing 40% efficiency in the energy conversion process, and nobody thought to check the thermal regulation systems? Steve, the head engineer, shifts uncomfortably. We've tried everything, except the obvious. I circle the problem areas in red. These cooling systems are completely inadequate for the heat output. Who approved these specs? Silence fills the room. Then a smooth voice from the doorway. I did. I turned to find Zane Ross leaning against the doorframe, expensive suit and practiced smile in place. Ah, the prodigal daughter returns. Mr. Ross, I keep my voice neutral. I wasn't aware you had engineering oversight. I've been consulting on this project. He strolls in like he owns the place. Your father values my input. Clearly, I point to the specs. Your input is costing us millions. His smile doesn't waver. Perhaps we should discuss this privately? Nothing to discuss. I'm scrapping these designs and starting fresh. That's not your decision to make. His voice hardens. Actually, it is. Full control of the Sustainable Energy Division, remember? Or did my father not mention our agreement? The engineering team watches our exchange like a tennis match. Zane's eye twitches, the first crack in his perfect facade. A word outside, please. He gestures to the door. No time. Val, could you pull up the quarterly financials? My sister, who's been quietly taking notes in the corner, jumps to action. The projector flickers to life, and I start connecting dots that have been nagging at me since reviewing the books. Interesting, I mutter, tracing the money flow. Very interesting. What is it? Val asks. These equipment purchases. I highlight several transactions. We're paying triple market rate, all through the same supplier. I turn to Zane. Your supplier, if I'm not mistaken? His smile vanishes. I should call your father. Please do. I'd love to explain how you've been bleeding the company dry with inflated contracts while sabotaging our technical progress. The door bursts open. My father storms in, face red. What's the meaning of this? Zane tells me you're causing problems. I cut him off. Dad, look at these numbers. Really look at them. He scans the screen, frowning. These can't be right. Oh, they're right. And that's just the beginning. I pull up more documents. Every decision Zane has made has pushed us closer to bankruptcy. Almost like he's working with someone who wants to buy the company cheap. Zane's cool demeanor cracks completely. These are baseless accusations, are they? Val speaks up, her voice shaking but determined. Because I found something interesting in the competitor analysis. She slides a folder across the table. Zane's been meeting with Apex Corp's CEO, the same company that's been trying to buy us out. My father sinks into a chair, the truth hitting him like a physical blow. Zane, we've been friends for 20 years. Friends? I laugh harshly. He's been playing you, Dad, using your pride and your outdated beliefs against you. Why do you think he pushed so hard against hiring women engineers? Because he knew we'd spot his shoddy work in seconds. The engineering team murmurs in agreement. Steve stands up. She's right, sir. We've been saying something was off with these designs, but Mr. Ross always overruled us. Zane backs toward the door. This is ridiculous. Brian, you can't possibly believe. Security. My father's voice is deadly quiet. Please escort Mr. Ross out and call our lawyers. As security leads a protesting Zane away, I turn back to the whiteboard. Right, now that's dealt with, let's fix this mess. Steve, get your team started on new thermal calculations. Val, I need complete audit of all contracts from the last 3 years. Lexi, my father says softly, I should have seen it. Yes, you should have. I keep my eyes on the whiteboard. Your prejudices made you vulnerable, but we can fix this. I face the engineering team. Starting with some new perspectives, I'm bringing in 3 women engineers tomorrow. Any objections? They shake their heads quickly. Steve actually looks relieved. Thank God, we've been understaffed for months. Good. I check my phone. A text from Ben with some thermal regulation suggestions. Let's get to work. We've got a company to save. As everyone files out, Val touches my arm. That was brilliant. No, I smile at her. We were brilliant. Nice work with that competitor analysis. She beams. Think Dad's finally getting it? I watch our father staring at Zane's empty chair, looking lost. He's learning. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from trusting the wrong people and doubting the right ones. Speaking of trust, Val whispers, I found something else in the old files. Something about Mom's shares in the company. You need to see this. My heart skips. Show me after lunch. Right now, we have a thermal regulation system to redesign. And maybe, just maybe, a father to re-educate. The boardroom feels like a pressure cooker. I stand at the head of the table, surrounded by aging men in expensive suits, all wearing identical expressions of skepticism. Val sits to my right, tablet ready. The 3 new women engineers I hired, Sarah, Maria, and Jasmine, flank my left, their credentials speaking louder than any defense I could offer. This is unprecedented. Board member Richard adjusts his tie nervously. A complete overhaul of the energy system in just 2 weeks? What's unprecedented is how long you let this company operate with faulty technology, I counter, pulling up our new designs. Sarah, walk them through the improvements. Sarah stands, confident despite the hostile stares. Our redesigned thermal regulation system has already shown a 60% efficiency increase in initial tests. We've cut operational costs by... The boardroom door slams open. Zane strides in, flanked by 2 lawyers. I'm afraid this meeting needs to be postponed, he announces, dropping a thick folder on the table. I'm here to address some concerning irregularities. My father rises. You're not welcome here. Actually, I am. Zane's smile is predatory. As a major shareholder, I have every right to attend board meetings, and I've found some interesting details about your daughter's contract. Val grabs my arm. Lexi, I shake her off, keeping my voice steady. Please, enlighten us. Your engineering license. He slides a document forward. It was temporarily suspended last year due to a conflict of interest investigation. The board members murmur. I clench my fists. An investigation that cleared me completely. After 3 months. 3 months during which you were technically unlicensed, making your current contract with Parker Industries invalid. That's absurd, Sarah interjects. A temporary suspension that's been lifted means she was unqualified when she signed, Zane interrupts. Everything she's done here is unauthorized, including hiring you. The room erupts in chaos. Board members arguing, lawyers shuffling papers, my father looking stricken. But all I can focus on is Zane's smug face. Enough! Val's voice cuts through the noise. She stands, trembling but determined. Before anyone makes any decisions, you need to see this. She projects a document onto the screen. Mom's will, the real one. My father goes pale. Valeria, don't. Mom left her shares to us. Val continues. 30% of the company, split between Lexi and me. Shares that somehow ended up in Zane's control instead. The room falls silent. I stare at my father, realization dawning. You gave Mom's shares to him? It was temporary, he whispers, just until the girls were older. Older? I laugh bitterly. I'm running a Fortune 500 engineering division, and Val's getting her MBA. How much older do we need to be? Zane's composure slips. Brian, this is a family matter. You're right, it is. I turn to the board. And as rightful shareholders, we demand an immediate audit of all share transfers since our mother's death. You can't, Zane starts. Actually, we can. Val pulls up another document. I filed the paperwork this morning. The SEC is already investigating. Zane lunges for her tablet, but Sarah and Maria step between them. Security appears at the door, summoned by Jasmine's discreet text. Mr. Ross, the head of security says firmly, please come with us. As they lead him out, he turns back. This isn't over, Lexi. You have no idea what you're dealing with. No, I correct him. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Dad, a word? The board files out, leaving me alone with my father and Val. He looks ancient, slumped in his chair. Why? I demand. Why give her shares to him? The company was struggling after your mother died. Zane offered to help, promised to return the shares. He rubs his face. I was grieving, desperate. So you stole from your daughters? I thought I was protecting you? He slams his hand on the table. Both of you, this business, it destroys families. Look what it did to your mother. Val gasps. What do you mean? What it did to Mom? But before he can answer, my phone buzzes. It's Ben. Emergency at the test site. System malfunction. Get here now. This conversation isn't over, I warn my father, gathering my things. Val, come with me. Sarah, Maria, Jasmine, meet us at the lab. As we rush out, Val grabs my arm. Lexi, what did he mean about Mom? I don't know. I hit the elevator button repeatedly. But I'm starting to think her car accident wasn't as accidental as we were told. The elevator doors open and we step in, both lost in thought. Just before they close, I catch a glimpse of my father through the boardroom windows. He's holding Mom's photo from his desk, shoulders shaking. For the first time since coming back, I wonder if my revenge might cost more than I bargained for. But the test site alarm blares again on my phone, and I push the thought away. One crisis at a time. Smoke billows from the test site as Val and I screech to a halt in my rental car. Sarah and Maria are already there, frantically working at the control panel. The prototype sustainable energy reactor, our last hope for saving the company, is making sounds no reactor should make. What happened? I demand, rushing over. Temperature spike, Sarah explains, fingers flying over the keyboard. The new cooling system failed completely. That's impossible. I checked the readings. We triple-checked everything. Someone sabotaged it. Jasmine calls from inside the control room. Look at this. On her screen, lines of foreign code scroll past. A virus, she explains, triggered to activate during the final test sequence. Val peers at the screen. Can you stop it? Not fast enough. I run calculations in my head. We need to shut it down manually, now. The manual override is inside the testing chamber, Maria warns. With these temperatures, I'm already grabbing protective gear. Keep trying to hack it if I'm not out in 5 minutes. I'm coming with you. Val starts forward, but I push her back. No, I need you to call Ben. He helped design the failsafe. Get him on video chat. The testing chamber doors feel like an oven when I push through them. Sweat instantly soaks my protective suit. The reactor core pulses an angry red, warning lights flashing everywhere. Ben's online. Val's voice crackles through my headset. Lexi, listen carefully. Ben's familiar voice steadies me. The override panel is on the north wall. You'll need to input the sequence exactly as I say it. I fight through the heat, reaching the panel. Ready. Delta 79. Static cuts through the transmission. Ben, signal's being jammed, Jasmine shouts. Someone's blocking all communications. The reactor groans ominously. Without the override sequence, this whole place will melt down. Think, Lexi, think. Then I spot something. A familiar pattern in the warning lights. The same pattern Mom used to teach us piano. Hot tears sting my eyes as her voice echoes in my memory. Remember, girls, every problem has a pattern. Find the pattern. Find the solution. Val! I scream into my headset. Mom's song, the one she taught us. What were the notes? What? Lexi, what are you? The piano song. Quick! D793A4. My fingers fly over the keypad, translating musical notes to numbers. The reactor shudders, then begins to power down. Emergency cooling systems kick in, flooding the chamber with blessed cold air. I stagger out to find Val waiting with an oxygen mask. How did you know? Mom? I gasp between breaths. She always said music and mathematics were the same language. Sarah runs up with her tablet. We traced the virus. It came from inside the company network. Someone with high-level access. Zane? Val suggests. Too obvious. I shake my head. He's been sloppy lately. This was elegant. Lexi, Jasmine calls from the control room. You need to see this. On her monitor is an old email chain from our mother to the board, dated 1 week before her death. I'm formally requesting an investigation into suspicious contracts, I read aloud. I believe someone is embezzling funds through our overseas operations. Val grabs my arm. The accident. It was right after this. There's more. Jasmine scrolls down. These contracts. They match the pattern we found in Zane's dealings, but they start years before he joined the company. My phone buzzes. Aunt Nancy. Turn on the news, she says without greeting. I grab Val's tablet, pulling up a live feed. Breaking news. Corporate scandal rocks industry. Whistleblower reveals decades of fraud. That's Marcus Thompson. Val points at the man being interviewed. Dad's old partner, the one who wanted you to marry his son. My blood runs cold as Marcus speaks. I can no longer keep silent about what happened to Julia Parker. Her death was no accident. Holy shit, Sarah whispers. My father bursts in, looking frantic. Lexi, Val, thank God you're safe. When I heard about the reactor, did you know? I cut him off, showing him Mom's emails. Did you know what they did to her? He sinks into a chair, looking broken. I suspected after she died, but Marcus threatened. He said you girls would be next. So you tried to marry me off to his son? My voice rises. To protect me? To get proof, he shouts. His son knew everything. If you had married him, you used me as bait? No, he deflates. I made so many mistakes. Trying to protect you both, I only made things worse. Val steps between us. The reactor sabotage. It wasn't Zane, was it? Marcus, our father confirms. He must have realized we were close to exposing him. The Sustainable Energy Project. It would have revealed the money trail. My phone buzzes again. Ben. FBI just arrived at Marcus's office. They're saying something about international fraud charges. I look at the reactor, still cooling down, then at my father's haunted face, and finally at Val's determined expression. Well, I say, straightening up, looks like we're not just saving a company anymore. We're getting justice for Mom, Val finishes. Our father stands. Tell me what you need. Everything, I answer. Every file, every memory, every detail about Mom's last days. It's time for the whole truth. And this time, no one's gonna stop us from finding it. Rain pounds against the study windows as I sort through Mom's old files. Val sits cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers, while our father paces, recounting that fatal week. Julia was acting strange, he says, working late, taking private calls. Then she left this. He hands me a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. Instructions to open it only if something happened to her. My hands shake as I break the seal. A USB drive falls out, along with a handwritten note. My darling girls, I read aloud. If you're reading this, I couldn't protect our company from the corruption I discovered, but maybe you can finish what I started. Val wipes her eyes. All this time, a knock interrupts us. Aunt Nancy bursts in, soaking wet. Marcus is dead. What? We all speak at once. Apparent suicide. Left a confession. She pulls out her phone, reading. Julia Parker discovered our scheme. We couldn't let her expose us. The brake lines were the cleanest solution. The room spins. Dad catches me before I fall. There's more, Nancy continues. He named names, board members, international partners, shell companies. It's bigger than we imagined. The FBI's here, Thompson announces from the doorway. They're asking for Ms. Lexi. Two agents enter, introducing themselves. The female agent, Rodriguez, speaks first. We need to talk about your mother's investigation. I just found out about it myself. I gesture to the scattered papers. Not that investigation. The male agent Miller corrects. The one you've been running for the past 3 weeks. Val gasps. I keep my face neutral. Explain. Someone's been accessing sealed federal records, Rodriguez says, using algorithms remarkably similar to ones your mother developed, following money trails she flagged 20 years ago. I glance at Jasmine's laptop, still running code in the corner. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Miller raises an eyebrow. Because the SEC just received an anonymous tip detailing exactly how Marcus Thompson's organization has been laundering money through sustainable energy projects worldwide, using your mother's original findings as a framework. Dad steps forward. My daughter was just trying to save our company and exposed an international fraud ring in the process. Rodriguez finishes. We're not here to arrest anyone, Ms. Parker. We need your help. Thunder crashes outside as I consider their words. What kind of help? Marcus's death complicates things. Miller explains. We need to move fast before his associates destroy evidence. Your mother's research, combined with your technical expertise, could crack their whole network. I finish, but I want something in return. Name it. Full immunity for everyone at Parker Industries who helped me, including my sister and father. The agents exchange looks. Done. And one more thing. I pull up the reactor data. Someone tried to kill me today. I want them. We know who it was, Rodriguez says quietly. That's why we're here. Marcus wasn't working alone. A familiar voice speaks from the doorway. No, he wasn't. We all turn. My blood freezes. Standing there, holding a gun, is Sarah. "I'm sorry, Lexi," she says, her hand steady. "But I can't let you finish what your mother started." "You?" Val breathes. "But you helped us." "I helped myself," Sarah snaps. 20 years building this network, hiding the money. Your mother almost ruined everything. And now her daughters, playing detective. "Drop the weapon." Both agents draw their guns. Sarah laughs. "You don't get it. I'm not alone." As if on cue, the power cuts out. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows. "The reactor sabotage," I realize. "You made it look like Marcus?" "While destroying evidence of the real financial network," she confirms. "Clever girl, just like your mother, and just as dead if you don't." A deafening crash interrupts her as Ben bursts through the side door, tackling Sarah. The gun skids across the floor. Val dives for it while the agents move in. "Perfect timing." I help Ben up once Sarah's cuffed. "Jasmine called me," he explains. "Said something felt off about Sarah's code. I was already on my way when the FBI called." Rodriguez secures Sarah while Miller checks the rest of the house. "We'll need statements from everyone." "First," I turn to Sarah. "Tell me something. The night Mom died? Were you there?" She meets my eyes, defiant. "I made the call. Marcus did the rest." Dad lunges forward, but I stop him. "No, she's not worth it. We'll destroy them properly, with evidence, with justice. Just like your mother would have wanted," Aunt Nancy says softly. As the agents lead Sarah away, I clutch Mom's USB drive. "We need to finish this. Tonight. Ben, call Maria and Jasmine. Val, get your laptop. Dad." He straightens. "Whatever you need. I need you to tell me everything about Mom's last investigation. Every detail you were too afraid to share before." Lightning illuminates the study as we gather around Mom's old desk. Her picture watches over us as we prepare to finish what she started. This time, the truth won't stay buried. Dawn breaks as we piece together the final connections. Empty coffee cups litter Mom's desk, surrounded by laptops displaying complex financial webs. Maria and Jasmine work furiously, tracking digital breadcrumbs while Ben cross-references data. "Got another one," Val exclaims. "Shell company in Singapore, connected to Sarah's network." "Add it to the map," I direct, watching as our digital visualization grows more complex. 20 years of fraud, corruption, and murder, all laid bare. Agent Rodriguez returns with fresh coffee. "We've got teams standing by worldwide. Once you give the signal, we move simultaneously." "Almost there," Ben mutters, fingers flying over his keyboard. "Just need to wait." He sits up straight. "Lexi, look at this." On his screen, a familiar name appears in Mom's old files. My heart stops. "Dad?" I turn to where he's dozing in an armchair. "Why is your signature on these offshore accounts?" He jerks awake, face pale. "What?" "These transfers," I point to the screen. "They're authorized under your name, dating back to before Mom died." The room goes silent. Val stands slowly. "Dad?" He rubs his face, looking ancient. "I didn't know, not at first. Marcus approached me about international investments, said we needed to diversify. The paperwork was complicated. You signed without reading," I finish flatly. By the time Julia discovered what they were using my signature for, it was too late. They had me compromised. "So you let them kill her?" Val's voice breaks. "No." He stands, desperate. "I tried to stop it. I called her that night, warned her not to drive the mountain road, but she said she had proof, was taking it to the authorities." Agent Miller appears in the doorway. "Mr. Parker, we need to have a conversation." "Wait," I interrupt. "Dad, what proof? We haven't found anything concrete from that night." He slumps. "Her laptop? She always backed everything up on it, but after the crash? It was never found," Jasmine finishes. already typing. Unless the insurance report, Maria says suddenly. It lists everything recovered from the crash, including a damaged laptop. Evidence log shows it went to the company's IT department, Ben reads, under Sarah's supervision. I grab my phone, calling Rodriguez. The old IT storage room, now. 20 minutes later, we're breaking into dusty filing cabinets while agents stand guard outside. Val sneezes as we shift through ancient hardware. Here, Ben pulls out a battered laptop. Serial number matches. Jasmine takes it reverently. The hard drive might still be intact. How long? I ask. Give me an hour. It takes 30 minutes. We huddle around her screen as Mom's last files load. Documents, photos, videos. Play that one. Val points to a video file dated the day she died. Mom's face fills the screen, looking exactly as I remember. If you're watching this, I didn't make it, but I've uploaded everything to secure servers. The evidence is hidden in the one place they'd never look, the company's sustainable energy patents. The patents? I whisper. Each patent application contains encoded data, Ben realizes, pulling them up, hidden in plain sight all these years. She knew they'd try to destroy her files, Val says, so she hid the proof in documents they couldn't touch without exposing themselves. Mom continues, Lexi, Val, I'm so sorry I won't see you grow up, but I know you'll finish this. Brian, my love, forgive yourself. Your signature may have opened the door, but your heart was always in the right place. Tears stream down Dad's face as agents lead him away. He goes quietly, pausing only to whisper, Make it right. Rodriguez returns, energized. We've got everything. Teams are moving in worldwide. Sarah's entire network is about to fall. Wait, I say. One more thing. I walk to the boardroom where emergency meetings are underway. Executives freeze as I enter. Ladies and gentlemen, I announce, in light of recent events, I'm calling for an immediate vote. All in favor of establishing the Julia Parker Foundation for Corporate Ethics and Women in STEM? Hands shoot up across the room. Nobody dares object. The foundation will be funded by seized assets from the corrupt network my mother died exposing, I continue. And its first act will be establishing oversight committees for all sustainable energy projects worldwide. I'll draft the paperwork, Val says, standing beside me. And I'll head the technical committee, Ben adds. As the sun rises fully, I stand at Mom's old office window. Her voice from the video echoes. Remember, girls, the truth always finds its way to light. We did it, Mom, I whisper. We brought them all down. My phone buzzes. Agent Rodriguez. Final arrest count 43 worldwide, including 3 board members and 6 international executives. I show the message to Val. She hugs me tight. Think Dad will be okay? He made mistakes, I say, but he helped us fix them. That counts for something. So what now? I smile, thinking of Mom's legacy and the changes we've set in motion. Now, we build something better, together. The autumn breeze carries the scent of coffee and fresh paint through the open windows of the newly renovated Parker Industries headquarters. I straighten Mom's portrait, now hanging prominently in the main lobby, as students file in for the Julia Parker Foundation's first scholarship ceremony. Nervous? Ben squeezes my hand. Terrified, I admit, watching young women in business attire fill the auditorium seats. What if you say, what if this doesn't work one more time? I'm telling Val, he threatens playfully. Speaking of Val, she strides onto the stage, commanding attention in her CEO suit. My little sister, all grown up and running the company while I handle the foundation. Who would have thought? Welcome to the first annual Julia Parker Scholarship Awards, she begins. Today, we celebrate not just academic excellence, but the courage to challenge corrupt systems and break down barriers. I slip backstage, where Maria and Jasmine are helping our guest of honor prepare. Dad straightens his tie, prison pale but standing tall. Ready? I ask. He nods. They approved my work release for this. Don't want to waste it. You earned it, I remind him. Your testimony helped convict 38 people. Small payment on a large debt. He touches Mom's wedding ring, which I now wear on a chain. Julia would be proud of you girls. Val's voice rings out. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Brian Parker. The audience's reaction is mixed. Some applause, some whispers. Everyone knows his story. Dad takes the podium, hands shaking slightly. 20 years ago, I made choices that cost me everything I held dear. He begins. My wife, my daughter's trust, my integrity. I chose pride over principle, silence over truth. But my daughters, his voice cracks. They chose justice. In the front row, Agent Rodriguez nods approvingly. Thanks to her advocacy, Dad's sentence was reduced in exchange for his cooperation and agreement to serve on the Foundation's ethics board after release. Today, Dad continues, we award scholarships to 20 young women entering STEM fields. Each recipient will also intern at Parker Industries, where they'll work on sustainable energy projects that prioritize ethics over profits. I step forward with the certificates as Val reads names. Each young face glows with determination, reminding me of Mom's video. The next generation will do better if we give them the chance. The ceremony concludes, but our day isn't over. In the renovated engineering wing, Maria unveils the prototype that consumed our last 3 months, a portable solar generator that costs a tenth of existing models. Mass production starts next week, she announces to the gathered press, and thanks to the Foundation's oversight, we can guarantee every unit is produced ethically, with fair labor and sustainable materials. Plus, Jasmine adds, the patents are structured to prevent the kind of financial manipulation that plagued the old system. Your mother's coding trick inspired that, she tells me quietly. Later, in Mom's old office, now the Foundation's headquarters, Val and I share tea from her favorite cup. Did you see the latest audit? Val asks. Record profits, 0 ethical violations. I confirm. Turns out doing the right thing is good business. Speaking of business, she slides over a tablet. Remember those diversity hiring quotas you demanded when you first came back? I scan the numbers, then laugh. 60% women in engineering? We exceeded the quota. Turns out, when you remove the corrupt gatekeepers, talent flows naturally. A knock interrupts us. Ben enters with Thompson, our faithful butler turned office manager. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here you need to meet. A young woman enters, clutching a familiar-looking notebook. I'm Amy. I found this at a garage sale. I think it belonged to your mother. My hands tremble as I open it. Mom's handwriting fills the pages, her personal journal from the year before she died. There's something else, Amy says. I'm a forensic accountant. Reading her notes, she predicted exactly how digital currency could be used for fraud. 20 years ago, I'd like to help the Foundation implement her preventive measures. Val and I exchange looks. Mom's legacy, still growing, still fighting corruption in ways we never imagined. Welcome aboard, I tell Amy. That evening, I visit Mom's grave with fresh flowers. The Foundation's scholarship certificate rests against her headstone, along with a photo of Dad speaking at the ceremony. We're not done yet, Mom, I whisper, but we're getting there. Your fight is our fight now, and we're winning. My phone buzzes, Ben reminding me about dinner. As I stand, a familiar warmth fills me, like Mom's hugs used to. The autumn breeze carries maple leaves across the cemetery, and I swear I hear her laugh in the wind. Some people say revenge is best served cold, but Mom taught us something better. Justice is best served by lifting others up. by turning wounds into wisdom, by making sure the next generation stands taller on our shoulders. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
My name is Nellie, and for as long as I can remember, I've been fascinated by the world around me in ways that seem to perplex my family. While Emma, my sister, played with dolls and dreamed of being a princess, I collected leaves, rocks, and anything else I could examine under the little magnifying glass I'd gotten from a cereal box. "Mom, why do leaves change color in fall?" I'd ask, holding up a particularly vibrant maple leaf I'd found. "Ask your teacher, Nellie. I'm busy helping Emma with her dance costume," she'd reply, barely glancing my way. This was a common response to my endless stream of questions about nature and science. I remember one particular afternoon when I was 7, sitting at our kitchen table with various household items spread out before me. I'd been mixing baking soda with different liquids, fascinated by the reactions. "What in heaven's name are you doing?" Mom's voice cut through my concentration. "Look at this mess. Clean this up right now. Your sister has her friends coming over for her birthday party, and I need the kitchen." Ah yes, Emma's birthday parties. They were always grand affairs with entertainers, life-sized cartoon characters, and dozens of guests. Mine, on the other hand, were quiet affairs with just my grandparents and a simple cake. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. "Here's your birthday present, sweetheart," Dad would say, handing me another volume of the science encyclopedia. Don't get me wrong, I loved those books. But watching Emma unwrap her mountain of toys and gadgets at her parties made it clear where our parents' attention truly lay. Thank goodness for my grandparents, Dad's parents. They were my sanctuary, my escape from the constant reminder that I was the odd one out in our family. Every weekend and school holiday, they'd welcome me into their home with open arms. "Tell me more about what you've learned this week, little scientist," Grandpa would say, his eyes twinkling with genuine interest as I rattled off my latest discoveries. Emma never came with me to our grandparents'. "They're so boring," she'd complain. "Besides, Mom and Dad are taking me to the new theme park this weekend." I'd watch from the window as they drove away, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. "Why can't I go too?" I once asked. "Oh, honey," Mom said, patting my head absently. "You wouldn't enjoy it. You'd probably just want to study the mechanics of the rides instead of having fun." So that's how it was. Emma was the normal one, the one who fit their image of what a daughter should be. And I was the one who asked too many questions, who preferred microscopes to makeup, who didn't quite belong. Things changed when I started middle school. My science teacher, Mrs. Peterson, was the first person outside my grandparents who seemed to truly see me. "Mr. and Mrs. Walker, your daughter has extraordinary potential," she told my parents during a parent-teacher conference. I was sitting outside the classroom, but I could hear everything clearly. I've never seen a student grasp complex scientific concepts so naturally. "We need to discuss transferring Nellie to our gifted program." "Gifted program?" Mom's voice had that dismissive tone I knew too well. "That sounds rather complicated. She's doing fine where she is. Besides, we have to consider Emma. It wouldn't be fair to give Nellie special treatment." I sat there, my heart sinking. Of course they'd say no. They always said no when it came to me. But then Grandma found out about it. The next day, she marched into my school like a general going to war. I'll never forget how she stood in the principal's office, her voice firm and unwavering. "My granddaughter will take those tests, and she will have every opportunity she deserves. I don't care what her parents said. But Mrs. Walker, we need parental consent. I'll handle my son and his wife. You just make sure Nellie gets her chance." And somehow, she did it. After a week of intense discussions, and I suspect some financial incentives from my grandparents, my parents finally agreed to let me take the placement tests. I passed them all with flying colors. Suddenly, my world expanded. The gifted program opened doors I never knew existed. International science competitions, academic olympiads, research seminars, I threw myself into all of it. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who thought like me, who got excited about the same things I did. I won my first international competition with a project about sustainable ecosystems. Then another. And another. Where should we put this one? Grandpa would ask each time I brought home a new trophy or diploma. In the box with the others, I'd say, pulling out my special cardboard box from under the bed. I never displayed my awards, partly because I didn't want to seem boastful, but mostly because I knew they made my parents uncomfortable. Emma, of course, had her own take on my success. Nobody likes a know-it-all, she'd sneer, but then turn around and say, "Hey, can you help me with my science homework? And maybe just, do it for me?" "Emma, that's cheating," I'd protest. "Nellie, help your sister right now," Mom would inevitably command. Family helps family. So I'd end up doing Emma's work, feeling like a fraud but too afraid to stand up to my parents. It became a pattern. Emma would demand, my parents would insist, and I would comply. I often overheard my parents talking about me when they thought I wasn't listening. Their whispered conversations floated up the stairs to my room, where I'd sit with my chemistry set or the latest research paper I was studying. "I just don't understand where she gets it from," Mom would say. "No one in our family is like this." "Maybe she was switched at birth," Dad would joke, but the undertone of seriousness in his voice hurt more than if he'd meant it as a pure jest. One evening, after I'd won another science competition, I heard Dad's voice from his study. He was talking to Emma about her struggling grades. "It's not fair that she's so smart," Emma whined. "Listen, sweetheart," Dad's voice softened. "The weak need to be supported. That's why we focus on you. Nellie, well, she'll be fine on her own." I pressed my back against the wall, fighting back tears. They thought they were justifying their neglect with twisted logic, as if being capable somehow meant I didn't need love or support. At school, I was that weird girl who spent lunch breaks in the laboratory instead of the cafeteria. Sure, people would come to me for help with their science homework, but real friendships? Those were rare. Grandma and Grandpa were my rocks. They'd listen for hours as I explained my latest experiments or theories. They never made me feel like I was too much or too different. "Look what I found for you," Grandpa would say, pulling out scientific journals or new equipment for my experiments. "I thought this might interest you." But despite having my grandparents' support, the hole in my heart where my parents' love should have been felt vast and empty. I'd watch other families at school events, parents proudly hugging their kids, siblings supporting each other, and feel a deep ache in my chest. Then came the news that would change everything. I was graduating early. At 16, I'd completed all my high school requirements and had been offered a full scholarship to one of the top universities in the country. The day I left for university felt like breathing fresh air for the first time. The campus was buzzing with energy, and for once, I wasn't the odd one out. In my advanced chemistry class, I met Sarah and Michael, who got just as excited about molecular structures as I did. For the first time in my life, I had friends who understood me. We'd spend hours in the lab, bouncing ideas off each other, getting excited about discoveries that would make most people's eyes glaze over. But even as I thrived in my new environment, a part of me still yearned for my family's approval. I'd call home weekly, hoping for more than the brief, disinterested conversations I usually got. "Yes, Nellie, that's nice," Mom would say when I tried to tell her about my research. "Oh, did you hear about Emma's new job? She's working at that fancy boutique downtown." I didn't know it then, but my time at university was the calm before the storm. It happened during one of my routine calls home. I was in the middle of my second semester, deep into my research project, when Mom's voice caught my attention. "And with your father's condition getting worse," she was saying to Dad, probably thinking I was on mute. "What about Grandpa?" I interrupted, my heart suddenly racing. "Mom, what's wrong with him?" There was a pause, too long to be innocent. "Oh, Nellie, I didn't realize you were still there. It's nothing serious, just a minor health issue. He's already recovering." "I'm coming home," I said immediately, already mentally calculating the fastest route. I can be there by tomorrow morning. No, no, don't be ridiculous, Mom's voice turned sharp. You need to focus on your studies. Emma is helping them out. Everything's under control. Something felt off about her tone, but I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Still, I called Grandma right after. Oh yes, dear, Grandma said, her voice oddly distant. Emma's been such a help. She comes by often to check on your grandfather. Emma? The same sister who used to say visiting our grandparents was boring? Something wasn't adding up. 2 weeks later, I stood at my grandparents' familiar front door, my heart pounding with anticipation. But instead of Grandma's warm welcome, I found Emma blocking the doorway. What are you doing here? She asked, her face a mask of fake surprise. I came to see Grandpa and Grandma. How is he? No one's home, she said quickly, too quickly. They're out. Out? Grandpa's sick. Where would they go? I don't know, Nellie. Just go away. She started to close the door. Wait. I put my foot in the doorway. Let me come in and wait for them. I said no one's home. She shoved the door hard against my foot. God, you're so annoying. Just leave. Confused and hurt, I tried calling Grandma. Straight to voicemail. This wasn't like her at all, she always kept her phone on for me. With nowhere else to go, I headed to my parents' house, hoping for answers. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen when I arrived. What are you doing home? Dad asked, not even trying to hide his annoyance. I came to see Grandpa and Grandma, but they're not home. Emma wouldn't let me in. Oh, honey, Mom interrupted, exchanging a look with Dad. We were going to tell you, your grandparents are in a nursing home. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What? Why didn't anyone tell me? It was a quick decision, Dad said smoothly. They needed specialized care. It's better this way. Which nursing home? I want to visit them. They're under quarantine right now, Mom said quickly. No visitors allowed. Maybe next time. Eventually, I did go back to university, but something felt terribly wrong. I tried to focus on my lab work, but my mind kept circling back to that afternoon at their door, to Emma's hostile face, to my parents' too smooth explanations. That terrible call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of an experiment when my phone lit up with Mom's number. The fluorescent lights of the university lab hummed above me as my heart started racing. Something about the timing of this call felt ominous. Nellie, she said, her voice oddly flat. Your grandfather passed away last night. The test tube I was holding slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound echoed through the empty lab like a gunshot. What? No, when's the funeral? My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. Thursday at 2 p.m. Don't be late. The way she said it felt strange, almost rehearsed. I didn't even bother cleaning up the broken glass. I rushed out of the lab, my mind spinning with grief and confusion. My beloved grandfather, gone. No chance to say goodbye, no final words of wisdom from the man who had believed in me my whole life. I took the first flight I could get, spending the entire journey trying to hold back tears as memories of him flooded my mind. At 1:30 p.m., I made my way to the church. The empty parking lot was my first clue that something was terribly wrong. My footsteps echoed in the silent building as I approached the entrance, dread building with each step. Inside, a custodian was methodically cleaning the floors. The Walker funeral? He asked when I inquired, looking up from his work. That ended hours ago. They held it at 10 a.m. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The world started spinning around me as I grabbed onto a nearby pew for support. Frantically, I pulled out my phone and called my parents. Oh, Nellie, Mom's voice dripped with disappointment. You must have mixed up the times. We clearly said 10 a.m. No, I said firmly, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. You said 2 p.m., I wrote it down. I know you said 2 p.m. Where's Grandma? I need to talk to her. Your grandmother is still in the nursing home, Dad cut in. And, she doesn't want to see you right now. She's very upset you missed the funeral. I told my parents I was heading back to university, but my feet had other plans. I found myself driving to my grandparents' house, desperate for answers, for some kind of explanation that would make sense of this nightmare. The familiar street looked exactly the same, the old oak tree, the carefully tended garden, the wind chimes Grandma loved so much. My hands were trembling as I rang the doorbell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the door opened, and there stood Grandma, the same Grandma who was supposedly in a nursing home, refusing to see me. Grandma. I moved to hug her, relief flooding through me at the sight of her familiar face. But she stepped back, and the look in her eyes stopped me cold. Her face was hard and unfamiliar, like she was looking at a stranger instead of her granddaughter. So now you decide to show up? Her voice was cold, nothing like the warm tones that had comforted me throughout my childhood. Grandma, what's going on? They told me you were in a nursing home. The words tumbled out as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Don't. She held up her hand, and the gesture felt like a physical blow. Your grandfather called you over and over. He was asking for you on his deathbed, wanting to say goodbye to his little scientist. But you couldn't be bothered to answer his calls or visit him. How could you be so cruel, Nellie? Let me see the number he was calling, I said, my voice barely steady. Please, Grandma. I need to understand this. Grandma disappeared inside for a moment and returned with a small notepad. Her hands were shaking as she showed me the number scribbled in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. That's not my number, I whispered, staring at the unfamiliar digits. I've had the same number since high school. They gave you a fake number? What do you mean, fake number? Grandma's stern expression began to crack. Your parents said you changed it when you went to university. They said you wanted to distance yourself from us. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Grandma, I came here during break. Emma was here, she wouldn't let me in. She said no one was home. Then Mom and Dad told me you and Grandpa were in a nursing home. Grandma's face went pale. Nursing home? We never. Emma and your parents told us you were too busy with your new university life to visit. They said, her voice cracked, they said you were ashamed of us, that we weren't sophisticated enough for you anymore. They said what? My knees felt weak. How could they? Grandma, they told me the funeral was at 2 p.m. today. When I got to the church, it was already over. They said I mixed up the times, but I didn't. I would never. The funeral was at 10 a.m., Grandma said slowly, realization dawning in her eyes. Your parents stood there and told everyone how ashamed they were that you couldn't even be bothered to come to your own grandfather's funeral. Emma was crying about how she'd tried so hard to reach you. I fell into her arms then, both of us dissolving into tears on the front porch. All the pain, all the confusion, all the manufactured distance between us poured out as we held each other. He died thinking I abandoned him, I sobbed into her shoulder. Grandpa died thinking I didn't care. Shoo, Grandma stroked my hair like she used to when I was little, her own tears falling. We know the truth now. We know. After we dried our tears, Grandma picked up the phone with a determined look on her face. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed, but her voice was steel when she spoke. Linda? Yes, it's me. I need you, Robert, and Emma to come over right away. There are some important documents we need to discuss. No, it can't wait. They'll be here in an hour, Grandma said, hanging up the phone. I told them I had important documents to discuss. The lawyer is on his way too. When the doorbell rang, Grandma squeezed my hand. Stay in the kitchen until I call you. I heard them enter, Mom's practiced social laugh, Dad's formal greetings, Emma's bored sighs. Then Grandma's voice, unusually sharp, please, everyone take a seat. Mr. Harrison is here to read George's will. That was my cue. I stepped into the living room just as the lawyer was opening his briefcase. The looks on their faces were unforgettable, Mom's perfect smile frozen in place, Dad's face draining of color, Emma's mouth hanging open in shock. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat and began reading. I, George Walker, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament. The room was silent except for the rustle of legal papers. First came the house, left to Grandma, along with a substantial sum for her ongoing care and maintenance. Then came the surprise that made Emma's face turn red with anger. To my granddaughter, Nellie Walker, I leave my newly constructed laboratory facility at 1420 Pine Street, fully equipped and ready for her research work. All necessary permits and paperwork have been processed and finalized. I couldn't believe my ears. Grandpa had built me a lab? My own research facility? The remainder of my estate, Mr. Harrison continued, is to be divided equally between my granddaughters, Nellie and Emma Walker. Emma's chair scraped against the floor as she stood up abruptly. But Grandma raised her hand. There's more, she said, pulling out a letter. Your grandfather wanted this read as well. My dear family, Grandma began reading, her voice strong and clear. I've watched over the years as favoritism has poisoned our family. To my son and daughter-in-law, your treatment of your daughters has been shameful. Each child deserves equal love, equal support. Stop, Emma screamed, jumping to her feet. This is ridiculous. Why should she get anything? Do you know what I had to do? All those hours sitting with that boring old man, pretending to care? Mom tried to shush her, but Emma was beyond control. You promised, she turned on our parents. You said if I played nice, if I visited him and acted like the perfect granddaughter, everything would be mine. You made me grovel to a dying man. The raw truth of their manipulation was finally exposed in all its ugliness. And now what? Emma continued, her voice getting shriller. Little Miss Perfect gets a whole laboratory, and I only get half the money? No. Give me the house. She doesn't need both, she can have her precious lab. I sat there in silence, watching my sister's true colors emerge in all their violent shades. The perfect daughter act had finally cracked, revealing the ugly reality beneath. Well, Mom broke the tense silence. Nellie, you heard your sister. Be reasonable. Do you know how much we've invested in your education? All those science camps, competitions. I almost laughed. You didn't pay for any of that. Grandma and Grandpa did. That's not the point, Mom cut in sharply. Family means sacrifice. If you want to honor your grandfather's memory, you'll sign over your share to Emma. She needs it more than you do. Honor his memory? Grandma's voice cut through the room like a whip. She stood up, Grandpa's letter still in her hands. Let me remind you exactly what George had to say about this family's idea of sacrifice. She began reading again. To my son and his wife, your blatant favoritism has created a poison in this family. Your treatment of Nellie has been nothing short of emotional abuse, while you've turned Emma into an entitled, spoiled. How dare you? Emma shrieked. No, how dare you? Grandma's voice thundered with a force I'd never heard before. You all manipulated and lied to a dying man. You kept his beloved granddaughter from saying goodbye to him. And now you have the audacity to talk about family and sacrifice? She walked to the door and flung it open. Get out, all of you. And Emma? I'm sorry George left you anything at all. You're nothing but a spoiled, selfish girl who learned from spoiled, selfish parents. They left in a flurry of threats and slammed doors. The house felt eerily quiet in their wake. That was 5 years ago. Today, I run my own research laboratory, the one Grandpa built for me. It's everything I could have dreamed of and more. Sometimes, when I'm working late at night, I swear I can feel his presence, proud and loving as ever. Grandma visits often. We have dinner together every Sunday, and she loves touring the lab, asking questions about my latest projects. She's taken some science classes at the local community college, saying it helps her understand my work better. But I think she just wants to share in the passion Grandpa and I always had for discovery. I haven't spoken to my parents or Emma since that day. Sometimes I see their names in my email inbox or their numbers on my phone, but I delete them without opening. They made their choice long ago, and now I've made mine. The other day, I found an old photo of Grandpa in one of his books. He was in his garden, pointing out something to a much younger me who was peering through a magnifying glass. On the back, he'd written, "My little scientist will change the world someday." I keep that photo on my desk now. Not all family is bound by blood, I've learned. Sometimes the truest family are the ones who believe in you, who support your dreams, who love you not despite your differences but because of them. I'm Nancy Mitchell, and this is how my dream house became the centerpiece of the biggest family drama I've ever experienced. My husband Tom and I worked our butts off for years to afford our home. We're both corporate lawyers, not the fancy type you see in movies, but the kind that spend countless hours reviewing contracts and dealing with paperwork. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and we had a clear goal in mind, our perfect house. "What do you think about this one?" Tom asked me one evening, showing me yet another listing on his laptop. We were sitting in our tiny apartment, surrounded by takeout containers and case files. I leaned in to look. Wait, this might be it. The house was exactly what we'd been searching for, a beautiful two-story colonial with a wraparound porch and plenty of room for the family we hoped to have someday. The moment we walked through the front door for the viewing, I knew it was meant to be ours. "I can already see where everything would go," I told Tom, spinning around in what would become our living room. "We could put a reading nook by that window, and the wall space would be perfect for my paintings." The next few months were a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings with contractors, and endless trips to home improvement stores. I took charge of the renovation process, much to Tom's relief. He's brilliant with legal documents, but hopeless with color schemes. I designed every room with care, choosing each paint color, light fixture, and piece of furniture deliberately. The walls of our living room and study soon displayed my own paintings, landscapes, and abstracts I've created over the years. 3 years passed quickly in that house. We settled into a comfortable routine, hosted dinner parties for colleagues, and created countless memories. Our home became our sanctuary, especially after long days at the office. Life was good. Simple, but good. We had everything we'd worked for, and we appreciated it all the more because we'd earned it ourselves. No handouts, no family money, just hard work and careful planning. Then my phone rang one Sunday morning. Mom's name flashed across the screen. "Nancy, sweetie, I have wonderful news." Her voice was bubbling with excitement. I had no idea that this call would be the beginning of chaos. No idea that my sister Sarah's engagement would somehow turn my carefully crafted life upside down. But that's the thing about family, they have a way of complicating even the simplest things. "Can we talk about something important?" Mom asked, her voice taking on that tone she uses when she wants something. "It's about Sarah's engagement." "Nancy, honey," Mom continued, her voice getting that sugary sweet tone she uses when she wants something. "Sarah's fiancé, well, his family is quite well off." I sat down at my kitchen counter, already sensing this wasn't just a casual conversation about Sarah's engagement. "That's great, Mom. When's the wedding?" She cleared her throat. "Well, about that. Before we set the date, we need to have a formal meeting with his parents. You know, the traditional way." "Okay," I said slowly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "The thing is," Mom paused. "Could we maybe have this meeting at your house?" I nearly dropped my coffee mug. "What?" "It's just that our apartment, you know how small it is. And with Robert's parents being so wealthy, I'm worried it might affect things." "Mom," I said firmly, "you want me to pretend my house belongs to you and Sarah?" "Just for one meeting," she pleaded. "Sarah's fiancé's parents are very traditional, very focused on status. I don't want them looking down on our family." I pinched the bridge of my nose. This is wrong on so many levels. You can't start a marriage based on lies. It's not exactly a lie, Mom argued. More like a temporary arrangement. They'll be moving to Boston after the wedding anyway. We'll rarely see them, and I'll explain everything later. And what about Sarah? She's okay with this deception? Mom's voice brightened. Oh, she thinks it's a brilliant idea. Please, Nancy, do this for your sister. I paced around my kitchen, my mind racing. Let me talk to Tom. That evening, I explained everything to my husband. To my surprise, he didn't immediately shoot down the idea. It's just one meeting, he said thoughtfully. And it would mean a lot to your parents. Are you serious? I stared at him. You're actually considering this? He shrugged. Sometimes keeping peace in the family is worth a small compromise. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The meeting was set for the following Saturday. I spent the entire week cleaning and preparing, feeling increasingly uneasy about the whole situation. When the day arrived, everyone showed up right on time, my parents, Sarah and her fiancé Robert, and his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Davidson. They were exactly as Mom had described, wealthy, well-mannered, and clearly used to the finer things in life. What a lovely home, Mrs. Davidson commented, admiring our living room. Before I could respond, Sarah jumped in. Thank you. I've always believed in creating a warm, welcoming space. I nearly choked on my wine. But that was just the beginning. As we gave them a tour, Sarah played the perfect hostess, discussing her decorating choices and future renovation plans. Then came the moment that made my blood boil. And this is my sister Nancy and her husband Tom, Sarah said casually, gesturing toward us. They'd been staying with us for a while. You know how hard it is for young couples just starting out. I felt Tom's hand squeeze my arm, warning me to stay quiet. But watching my sister stand there, playing Lady of the Manor while describing us as charity cases she'd taken in out of the kindness of her heart, it took every ounce of self-control not to speak up. The dinner was going surprisingly well, despite my growing discomfort with Sarah's performance as lady of the house. Tom kept shooting me sympathetic glances across the table as we finished our dessert. I thought we were almost in the clear when Sarah suddenly sat up straighter, her eyes sparkling with what I recognized as her brilliant idea of look. You know, she announced, setting down her wine glass with a flourish, instead of renting some impersonal venue, we should have the wedding right here. I inhaled sharply, my fork clattering against my plate. My eyes shot to Mom, who was making frantic, stay quiet gestures while trying to maintain her smile. Actually, I managed to say, keeping my voice steady, I don't think that's the best idea. The layout isn't really suited for a wedding reception. The cleanup alone would be. Oh, don't be silly, Sarah cut me off with a wave of her hand. It won't be that many people. Just family and close friends. Still, I persisted, there's the parking situation, and the neighbors to consider. A proper venue would be much more. Robert's parents are giving us a honeymoon trip to the Maldives, Sarah interrupted again, beaming at the Davidsons. We'll leave right after the reception, so we won't even be here for the cleanup. Great. So not only did she want to commandeer my house, but she was planning to leave the mess for me too. Mrs. Davidson looked around appreciatively. It really is a beautiful space for a wedding. So much character. And it would save quite a bit on venue costs, Sarah added, giving Robert's parents her most winning smile. We could put that money toward other aspects of the celebration. I watched in horror as the Davidsons nodded approvingly. My house was being volunteered for a wedding venue, and I couldn't even object without exposing the whole charade. Then Mrs. Davidson noticed one of my landscape paintings above the fireplace. Oh, what a gorgeous piece. The light is captured so beautifully. Who's the artist? Before I could open my mouth, Sarah jumped in. Actually, I painted that. I've been painting since I was little. I felt the blood drain from my face. That painting had taken me months to complete. It was from our trip to Maine last summer, a sunrise over the coast that I'd worked on meticulously to get just right. You're so talented. Mrs. Davidson exclaimed. Would you consider painting something for me? Perhaps a seascape? I've always loved ocean views. Of course, Sarah agreed enthusiastically. Consider it my wedding gift to you. I'll have it ready before the big day. I gripped my napkin under the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Tom's hand found my knee and squeezed it gently, but even his touch couldn't calm the rage building inside me. Have you completely lost your mind? I exploded as soon as the Davidsons' car pulled away. A wedding? In my house? And now you're claiming my paintings are yours? Sarah's bottom lip trembled in that practiced way she's perfected since childhood. Nancy, please. It's just for one day. You heard them, they love the house. Because they think it's yours, I shot back. This whole thing has gone way too far. Mom stepped between us. Nancy, sweetie, try to understand. We can't afford to rent a proper venue, but we've already promised the Davidsons we'd contribute to the wedding. That's not my problem. I turned to Dad, hoping for support, but he just stood there looking uncomfortable. Please, Nancy, Sarah begged. It'll only be a few hours. Just family and close friends, I promise. Maybe 50 people, tops. I shook my head firmly. No, absolutely not. That's when Sarah changed tactics, turning to Tom with her best puppy dog eyes. Tom, you understand, don't you? You've always been like a brother to me. I watched in disbelief as my husband's resolve crumbled. Well, he said hesitantly, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Just one afternoon. Tom, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'll make it up to you, he whispered, but the damage was done. Sarah's face lit up with triumph. Oh, and Nancy, don't forget about the seascape for Mrs. Davidson. That can be your wedding gift to me. I stood there, mouth agape, as she practically skipped out the door. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of Sarah's reign of terror. Over the next few weeks, she treated my house like her personal photo studio. Every day brought new social media posts, getting ready for my big day in my dream home, or can't wait to say I do in this gorgeous space. Then came the day before the wedding. I was working in my home office when the front door burst open. The decorating team is here, Sarah announced, leading in a woman laden with bags and boxes. Before I could protest, they were hammering nails into my carefully painted walls, draping gauzy fabric across my windows, and rearranging my furniture. Stop, I cried as they started hanging fairy lights from my vintage chandelier. You can't just. Oh, relax, Sarah rolled her eyes. I'll fix any damage after the wedding. Stop being so uptight. Uptight? I watched in horror as they pushed my antique reading chair into a corner to make room for what appeared to be a flower arch. This is my house. It's just for one day, Sarah said dismissively, directing the decorator to hang more tulle from my staircase. Everything needs to be perfect for the photos. Crash. The sound of shattering ceramic made my heart stop. The blue and white vase, a piece I'd found at an antique market in Providence, lay in pieces near the fireplace. Oops, Sarah said, barely glancing at the fragments. We'll get you a new one. That vase was one of a kind. My voice shook with anger. God, Nancy, it's just a stupid vase. Stop being so materialistic. Sarah rolled her eyes and then suddenly brightened. Oh, we need to prepare the bedroom. Before I could stop her, she was charging up the stairs. I followed, horrified, as she burst into my bedroom where Tom was still sleeping after his night shift. Up and at him, she chirped, yanking open the curtains. Tom jolted awake, confused and squinting. What's going on? Sarah tossed a package of new bedding at me. Here, put these on. I got the highest thread count they had, perfect for a wedding night. Wedding night? I sputtered. In our bedroom? Well, duh. It's the master bedroom. Sarah was already rummaging through my closet, pulling out pillows. We'll need to move these, maybe add some rose petals, ooh, and some romantic lighting. Where exactly do you expect us to sleep? I demanded. She shrugged, not even turning around. There's a Motel 6 off the highway. Or you could crash at Mom and Dad's. I looked at Tom, who was sitting up in bed, his guilt-ridden expression matching his bed head. This was all his fault for giving in to her demands. Sarah, he started, clearly trying to backpedal, maybe we should. Oh. She spun around suddenly. Nancy, where's the seascape? Mrs. Davidson asked about it yesterday. She's so excited to see it at the wedding. The absolute audacity of this woman. My sister. Standing in my bedroom, planning to kick us out of our own house, and now demanding artwork I never agreed to create. There is no seascape, I said coldly. And there never will be. Sarah's face froze. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not painting anything. In fact, there won't be any wedding here tomorrow. You can't do that. Sarah's voice rose to a shriek. Watch me. This is my house, and I'm done with this charade. Sarah's face turned an alarming shade of red. She yanked her phone from her pocket and stabbed at the screen. Mom, she wailed into the phone. Nancy's ruining everything. She says we can't have the wedding here anymore. Nancy, are you there? Mom's voice crackled through Sarah's phone speaker. What's all this fuss about? The wedding's practically here. Just take a little trip to the mountains with Tom for the weekend. You two could use a romantic getaway. Something in my brain short-circuited. Wait, what do you mean, take a trip? Aren't we invited to the wedding? The silence on the other end was deafening. Well, Mom hesitated. It's a very intimate ceremony. We need to focus on impressing Robert's family, and... Are you telling me, I said slowly, my voice rising, that I'm not even invited to my sister's wedding? A wedding that's happening in my own house? Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. Don't be so dramatic, Nancy. It's not like you're the most important person there. Robert's aunt is flying in from Switzerland, and his parents' friends are all very influential people. Your sister's right, Mom chimed in through the phone. We need to prioritize the guest list, and well, you understand, don't you? Tom, who had been quietly listening, suddenly stood up. This is absolutely ridiculous. You can't kick us out of our own house and not even invite us to the wedding. I looked at my husband's outraged face, at my entitled sister, at the mess they'd made of my bedroom. And suddenly, something clicked in my mind. A plan started forming. You know what? I said, my voice surprisingly calm. You're right, I'm being silly about all this. Sarah's face lit up with surprise and triumph. Really? Finally, you're being reasonable. Yes, I smiled sweetly. You go ahead and finish decorating. Tom and I will head to the mountains for a romantic weekend. I caught Tom's confused look and gave him a subtle wink. His eyes widened slightly, but he played along. Here, I said, handing Sarah my house keys. Just make sure everything's cleaned up after. Of course, Sarah beamed, pocketing the keys. See? I knew you'd come around eventually. She and the decorator spent another hour putting final touches on their wedding wonderland, while Tom and I quietly packed overnight bags. When they finally left, Sarah was practically skipping with satisfaction. As soon as we got in our car, Tom turned to me. Okay, what are you planning? Because I know that look, and that wasn't surrender back there. I started the engine, a small smile playing on my lips. Just trust me, honey. Sometimes you have to let people think they've won, to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. By this time tomorrow, everyone will understand exactly whose house they'd been taking for granted. As we headed toward the mountains, I couldn't help but feel a little thrill of anticipation. Sarah thought she had won, but she had no idea what was coming. Sometimes being a lawyer has its advantages, especially when it comes to understanding property rights and security systems. The morning sun was streaming through our hotel room window when my phone rang. The security company's number flashed on the screen. Mrs. Mitchell? This is Derek from Home Shield Security. We've detected an entry alarm at your residence. The patrol is en route now. Thank you for letting me know, I replied, unable to suppress my smile. Please keep me updated. Tom looked up from his coffee. It's starting, isn't it? Before I could answer, my phone erupted again. This time it was Mom. Nancy, she screamed into the phone. What is the meaning of this? There are security guards here. The alarm won't stop. You need to call them right now and tell them you gave us permission to be here. Did I? I asked innocently. I don't recall giving anyone permission to use my house today. But you gave Sarah the keys. I gave Sarah keys, yes. That doesn't mean I gave permission for a wedding party to enter my private property. The security company called again while Mom was still spluttering. Mrs. Mitchell, we have a situation here. There's a group of people claiming they have permission to use the house for a wedding. They have keys, but no documentation. We need your confirmation. I absolutely did not give permission for anyone to use my house today, I said firmly. In fact, I'm quite concerned about this unauthorized entry. I could hear the chaos unfolding through the phone, Sarah's hysterical crying, guests murmuring in confusion, and the guard's professional but firm voice requesting everyone to step outside. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, Mrs. Davidson's voice, sharp with dawning realization. What do you mean this isn't your house? Ma'am, the security guard explained, this property belongs to Nancy and Thomas Mitchell. Without their explicit permission or presence, this gathering constitutes unauthorized entry. Sarah, Robert's voice cut through the commotion, you lied to my family? About owning this house? I can explain, Sarah wailed. Everyone will need to come down to the station to sort this out, another voice announced. Police had arrived. The next few hours were a parade of phone calls. The police confirming my statement that no, I hadn't authorized a wedding in my house. The security company updating me on the situation. And finally, a call from a very subdued mom. Your sister's been released with a warning, she said quietly. But, Robert, he called off the wedding. Said he couldn't marry someone who would build their relationship on lies. His parents are furious. They're calling us social climbers and frauds. I let that sink in for a moment. Well, aren't they right? Actions have consequences. Maybe Sarah'll learn something from this. After hanging up, I turned to Tom, who had been listening to my side of the conversations with growing amazement. You planned this all along, didn't you? He asked. From the moment you handed over those keys? Let's just say I knew exactly what would happen when they tried to enter a house with a state-of-the-art security system they didn't know existed. Tom shook his head, but he was smiling. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Tom and I returned home the next morning to find our house looking like an abandoned theater set. Tulle and fairy lights hung limply from the walls, wilting flowers scattered across the floor, and chairs arranged in neat rows for a ceremony that never happened. We spent the morning restoring our home to its former state, working in comfortable silence. Each decoration we removed felt like reclaiming a piece of our sanctuary. When we finally collapsed onto our couch, now back in its proper place, someone knocked at the door. It was Mom and Dad, looking like they'd aged 10 years overnight. How could you do this to your sister? Mom burst out before I could even invite them in. Do you have any idea how humiliated we all were? How could I? I repeated incredulously. How could you? You tried to steal my house for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. Dad stepped forward, his face stern. We've been talking, and if you don't apologize to your sister and make this right, you can forget about any inheritance. The family cabin, your grandmother's jewelry, all of it will go to Sarah. To their surprise, I laughed. A real, genuine laugh that felt like releasing years of pent-up frustration. Keep it, I said, gesturing around me. Everything in this house, everything Tom and I have, we earned ourselves. We don't need your inheritance, and we definitely don't need your approval of how we defend our home and our dignity. You've always been selfish, Mom spat. Always thinking you're better than everyone else with your fancy job and your big house. No, Mom. I just respect myself enough not to let people walk all over me, even family. Especially family. Then you're no longer part of this family, Dad declared. Don't call us, don't visit. You're no longer our daughter. They turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind them. The sound echoed through the house, but strangely, I felt no pain, only relief. Tom wrapped his arms around me. Are you okay? I leaned into his embrace. I meant what I said. We built this life together, honestly, and through hard work. No deception, no using people, no shortcuts. Sarah might have lost a fiancé, Tom mused, but maybe she gained a valuable lesson. I hope so. You can't build happiness on lies, whether it's a marriage or a family relationship. It all comes crumbling down eventually. We stood there in our restored living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together. On the walls, my paintings, my real paintings, caught the afternoon light. The furniture was back where it belonged. Everything was in its right place. You were right, you know, Tom said softly. The most important thing in a family is mutual respect. I nodded, thinking about the true meaning of family, not the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build, based on love, trust, and respect. I'm Diana, and I never thought I'd be telling this story. Growing up, life seemed pretty normal. It was just me, my older brother Jack, and our parents in a modest house on Maple Street. Mom stayed home, living off some inheritance money, while Dad worked his ass off as a sales manager at Burke's Building Supplies. We weren't rolling in dough, but we got by okay. Back then, Mom and Dad tried to treat us equally. At least that's what I thought. They saved up for both our college funds, pinching pennies where they could. When Jack graduated high school, our parents threw him a big bash. Fast forward a few years, and it was my turn to head off to college. No party this time, just a quiet dinner at home. I drove off feeling, I don't know, relieved maybe? Like I could finally breathe without Jack's shadow looming over me. College was a whole new world. I made friends, joined the debate team, even dated a bit. I'd Skype home every now and then. I'd try to tell them about my own stuff, but their eyes would glaze over. It was like they were just waiting for their turn to talk about Golden Boy Jack again. For years flew by, and before I knew it, I was heading home with a shiny new degree in my back pocket. I was ready to take on the world, maybe move to the city, and start my career. But the moment I walked through that front door, lugging my suitcases behind me, I knew something was different. The house reeked of pine sol and air freshener, like Mom had gone on a cleaning rampage. Diana, honey, welcome home, Mom said, giving me a quick side hug before rushing back to the kitchen. Your brother's bringing his new girlfriend over for dinner. I want everything to be perfect. And just like that, I knew. Nothing had changed. I was still an afterthought in my own home. Over the next few days, I watched in disbelief as my parents fawned over Jack and his girlfriend, Melissa. Jack had landed some hotshot job at an investment firm, and suddenly he was the second coming of Christ. Mom turned into some kind of demented hotel maid, making Jack and Melissa's bed, doing their laundry, even cleaning Jack's room like he was still a kid. It didn't take long for me to realize I had no place in that house anymore. My childhood bedroom? Turned into a home office for Jack. My spot at the dinner table? Now occupied by Melissa. It was like I'd been erased, replaced by this new, improved version of our family. One night, after another dinner of watching my parents hang on Jack's every word, Dad cornered me in the kitchen. Diana, he said, his tone all businesslike, your mother and I think it's time you found your own place. You're a college graduate now. Time to spread your wings, kiddo. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were kicking me out, plain and simple. And the way Dad was talking, like he was doing me some big favor? It made my blood boil. That night, I called Grandma Rose. She's Dad's mom, and probably the only person in our family with any sense left. Oh, sweetie, she said when I told her what happened, her voice warm and comforting even through the phone. You come stay with me. I've got plenty of room. I was tempted, believe me. Grandma's place was like a palace, but I knew I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. Thanks, Grandma, but I think I need to do this on my own, I said. There was a pause, then Grandma said, I'm proud of you, Diana. Tell you what, I'll help you with the first month's rent. Consider it a graduation gift. I tried to refuse, but Grandma wouldn't hear of it. A week later, I was moving into my own apartment. It wasn't much, a studio with a kitchenette and a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. I landed a job at a local marketing firm. Entry-level stuff, but it was a start. I threw myself into work, trying to build a life that was completely separate from the circus my family had become. Months went by. I'd get the occasional text from Mom, usually something generic like "Hope you're doing well." It was like they'd written me off as a lost cause. Jack was their golden ticket to a cushy retirement, and I was just an afterthought. But life has a funny way of surprising you. 6 months after I moved out, I met Kyle. He was different. He listened when I talked. He cared about my dreams, my fears. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. We dated for 6 months, and it was like a whirlwind. Before I knew it, we were moving in together. And then, one night over Chinese takeout, Kyle got down on one knee right there in our tiny living room. The next challenge was introducing Kyle to my parents. The moment my parents found out Kyle had his own apartment and a good job at a tech startup, their eyes lit up like Christmas trees. So, Kyle, Dad said, leaning forward in his chair, tell us more about your job. What exactly does your company do? Kyle launched into an explanation about app development and future market projections. I watched in amazement as my parents hung on his every word, nodding and smiling. And what are your plans for the future? Mom chimed in. Career-wise, I mean. Kyle talked about his 5-year plan, his goals to move up in the company. With each word, I could see my parents warming up to him more and more. Finally, Dad clapped Kyle on the shoulder. Well, son, I think you'll make a fine addition to our family. I couldn't believe it. After years of feeling like I couldn't do anything right in their eyes, suddenly I was back in their good graces. All because I'd found a man they approved of. Mom called me the next day, her voice bubbling with excitement. Diana, honey, your father and I have been talking, she said. We want to help with the wedding. We'll cover half the costs and handle all the organizing. We want your day to be perfect. I felt a warmth spreading through my chest. Finally, after all these years, my parents were treating me like I mattered. Like I was equal to Jack. I should have known it was too good to be true. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning. Mom took charge, booking the fanciest restaurant in town for the reception. Dad handled the guest list, making sure to invite every distant relative and business associate he could think of. I threw myself into it all, picking out flowers, tasting cakes, and finally finding the perfect dress. It was a beautiful thing, all lace and satin that made me feel like a princess. Then, 2 weeks before the big day, my phone rang. It was Mom. Diana, honey, she said, her voice tight. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to cancel the wedding. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? Mom, what are you talking about? It's your brother, she said, her voice breaking. He and Melissa had a huge fight. She left him. He's absolutely devastated. I gripped the phone tighter, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Okay, but what does that have to do with my wedding? Well, we can't very well have a big celebration when your brother is so depressed, can we? It wouldn't be right. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, the wedding is in 2 weeks. Everything's booked. People have made travel plans. How can you just cancel it? Now, Diana, Dad's voice came on the line. When did this become a conference call? Don't be selfish. Your brother needs us right now. Selfish? I repeated, my voice rising. How am I being selfish? This is my wedding. Oh, for heaven's sake, Dad snapped. Stop being so dramatic. You can get married anytime. Your brother needs us now. But that's final, Diana, Mom said, her voice cold. You'll need to let your guests know. And then they hung up. They canceled my wedding and hung up on me. I stood there, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. How was I going to tell Kyle? His parents? All our friends who had booked flights and hotels? More than that, how could my parents do this to me? After all the promises, all the plans, they were throwing it all away because Jack got dumped. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Just when I thought things were finally going my way, just when I thought my parents finally saw me as an equal to Jack, they pulled the rug out from under me. I don't know how long I sat on that floor, my mind reeling. But eventually, anger started to replace the shock. I grabbed my phone and dialed Jack's number. He picked up on the third ring. What? He sounded irritated, like I'd interrupted something important. Jack, what the hell is going on? Mom and Dad just canceled my wedding because of you. They said Melissa left you and you're devastated. I messed up, okay? His voice was flat, emotionless. I cheated on her. She found out. I want Melissa back. That's all there is to it. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Okay, but what about my wedding? Mom and Dad canceled everything because of you. There was a rustling sound, like he was shrugging. Not my problem, sis. Wasn't planning on coming anyway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you don't care if I get married or not? Hey, do what you want. Just leave me out of it. And then he hung up. Just like that. I stared at my phone, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could he be so callous? And how could my parents cancel my wedding over this? I dialed my parents' number, my hands shaking with anger. Mom picked up. Diana, we told you. I just talked to Jack, I cut her off. Did you know he cheated on Melissa? That's why she left. There was a pause. Now, Diana, Dad's voice came on the line. When did this become a habit? Your brother is going through a difficult time. We need to support him. Support him? I was practically yelling now. What about supporting me? It's my wedding. That's enough, Dad roared. The wedding is off. End of discussion. And once again, they hung up on me. I screamed in frustration, throwing my phone onto the couch. How could they do this? How could they be so blind? In desperation, I called the one person I knew would be on my side, Grandma Rose. Grandma, I said, my voice breaking. I need your help. I poured out the whole story, the canceled wedding, Jack's cheating, my parents' refusal to listen. Grandma listened quietly, only speaking when I'd finished. Oh, my dear, she said, her voice full of sympathy. What a mess. Don't you worry, I'll talk some sense into them. I felt a glimmer of hope. If anyone could get through to my parents, it was Grandma Rose. But an hour later, my phone rang. It was Grandma, and she sounded defeated. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, she said. I tried, but they wouldn't budge. Your father said they've already canceled the restaurant and notified the guests. As I hung up, I felt despair. My parents had made their choice clear, Jack would always come first, no matter what. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. I dragged myself out of bed, still feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. When I opened the door, there stood Grandma Rose, holding a tray of coffee and pastries. Thought you could use some breakfast, dear, she said, bustling past me into the apartment. As I sat across from her at my tiny kitchen table, clutching a mug of coffee like a lifeline, Grandma dropped another bombshell. I found out why your parents really canceled your wedding, she said, her voice tight with anger. I braced myself. Why? They'd bought Jack an expensive vacation package for two. And a brand new sports car. Grandma's lips were pressed into a thin line. Apparently, Jack's supposed to give Melissa the keys on the trip. Some grand gesture to win her back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? But, how can they afford all that? Grandma reached across the table, taking my hand. They can't, dear. That's why they canceled your wedding. They're using that money to pay for Jack's apology gifts. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. All this time, I'd thought maybe, just maybe, they had Jack's best interests at heart. But this was beyond the pale. They're paying for his wedding too, Grandma continued, her voice soft. If Melissa takes him back, that is. They simply don't have the money for 2 weddings. So they chose his, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Grandma nodded, her eyes full of sympathy. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. But listen to me. You deserve your special day. So I'm going to pay for your wedding. I burst into tears then, overwhelmed by her kindness. Grandma moved around the table, wrapping me in a hug. Now, she said, stroking my hair. No more tears. We've got a wedding to plan. Over the next few hours, we made calls, sent emails, and generally worked our asses off. I sent out a mass email to all the guests, apologizing for the confusion and announcing the new wedding date, 4 weeks from now. Kyle was amazing through it all. When I told him what happened, he didn't get angry or frustrated. He just held me and said, as long as I'm marrying you, I don't care about the details. His parents were equally supportive. Kyle's mom even offered to help with the planning, saying, we're family now, dear. We stick together. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Grandma, Kyle, his parents, and I threw ourselves into wedding planning. We found a new venue, rebooked the caterer, and somehow managed to pull everything together. As the wedding day approached, I felt a mix of excitement and sadness. Excitement for my future with Kyle, sadness for the family I seemed to be leaving behind. My parents hadn't reached out once since canceling the original wedding. It was like I'd ceased to exist for them. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more twisted, my mom decided to kick it up a notch. My phone started blowing up with calls from her, but I wasn't in the mood to hear more bullshit, so I let them go to voicemail. Big mistake. Diana, her voice crackled through the speaker, dripping with venom, I know what you're doing with your grandmother. Stop it right now. You have no right to turn her against us. I deleted the message, rolling my eyes. But they kept coming. Your father and I raised you better than this. How dare you manipulate an old woman for her money? Delete. If you don't stop this right now, you'll regret it. We're your parents, Diana. Remember that. Delete. 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 A few days later, Kyle called me into the living room, his face pale. Babe, you need to see this. He handed me his phone, open to Facebook. There, in all its glory, was a post from my mom. My jaw dropped as I read. It breaks my heart to say this, but my daughter Diana has shown her true colors. She's manipulating her poor, confused grandmother for money. She doesn't care about family, only herself. How did we raise such a selfish child? I couldn't believe my eyes. Are you kidding me? I muttered, scrolling through the comments. It got worse. My dad had chimed in, Diana has always been jealous of her brother's success. Now she's trying to turn the family against us. Shameful. I felt sick. How could they do this? How could they lie about me like this? An hour later, I was at Grandma's house, watching in awe as she set up her iPad. Your parents think I don't know how to use the internet, she chuckled. Let's show them how wrong they are. We spent the next hour filming a video. Grandma spoke directly to the camera, her voice clear and strong. I'm Rose Thompson, and I'm here to set the record straight. I'm of sound mind, and I'm disgusted by the lies my son and daughter-in-law are spreading about my granddaughter, Diana. She hasn't manipulated me or tried to turn me against anyone. She's a kind, loving young woman who deserves better than this treatment. She went on to detail everything: how my parents canceled my wedding for Jack's benefit, how they'd chosen him over me time and time again. By the end, I was in tears. "I love both my grandchildren," Grandma concluded, "but I won't stand by and watch one be mistreated. Shame on you, Robert and Linda. You should be ashamed of yourselves." We posted the video that night. Within hours, it had hundreds of comments and shares. The family was in an uproar. "Cousin Sarah, I knew Diana wouldn't do something like that." Great Aunt Mildred, "I always said Robert was too soft on that boy of his." Uncle Jim, "Rob, Linda, this is low. Real low. You need to make this right." But for every supportive comment, there was one defending my parents. The family was split down the middle, arguing back and forth in the comments section. As I sat there, watching the chaos unfold on my screen, I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. On one hand, the truth was finally out there. On the other, I was watching my family tear itself apart. The next day, my phone rang. It was Uncle Mike, Mom's brother. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself for more family drama. "Diana, it's Uncle Mike." His voice was warm, not at all what I expected. "I saw the video. I had no idea things were so bad." I felt a lump in my throat. "Yeah, it's been pretty rough." There was a pause, then he said, "Listen, kiddo. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now, but I want you to know I'm on your side. And, well, if your dad's not coming to the wedding, I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle. If you want, that is." I couldn't hold back the tears. "Uncle Mike, thank you. Yes, I'd love that." We talked for a while longer, catching up and making plans. When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Maybe, just maybe, things were looking up. As Kyle and I finalized the guest list, I stared at the names of my parents and Jack. With a deep breath, I crossed them out. Kyle's parents were amazingly supportive. When we told them about the guest list, Kyle's mom hugged me tight. "Your family now, Diana. We've got your back." The big day arrived faster than I could have imagined. We'd scaled back our plans, opting for a smaller, more intimate ceremony. As I stood in the bridal suite, Grandma Rose helping me with my veil, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't expected. The ceremony was perfect. Uncle Mike beamed with pride as he walked me down the aisle. Kyle's face when he saw me. I'll never forget that look as long as I live. We said our vows, exchanged rings, and just like that, we were married. At the reception, surrounded by the people who truly cared about us, I felt happier than I had in months. We danced, laughed, and celebrated love, not just mine and Kyle's, but the love of a family that chooses to support each other. As the night was winding down, Grandma Rose clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. She stood, a bit shaky on her feet, but her voice was strong and clear. "I have an announcement to make," she said, smiling at me. "Diana, you've shown incredible strength and grace through all of this. You're the granddaughter I always dreamed of having. So, I want everyone here to know that I've decided to make Diana my sole heir. It's not much, but it's my way of showing her how proud I am." The room erupted in applause and cheers. I sat there, stunned, tears streaming down my face. Kyle squeezed my hand, grinning. I stood up, hugging Grandma tight. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "I love you so much." "I love you too, dear," she said, patting my cheek. "Now go on, enjoy your party. It's your day." As I looked around the room at all the smiling faces, Kyle, his parents, Uncle Mike, and all the friends and family who'd stood by me, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was my family now. Not perfect, maybe, but real and loving. The post-wedding bliss lasted about a week, before all hell broke loose. I was curled up on the couch with Kyle, flipping through our wedding photos, when my phone exploded with notifications. "What the?" I muttered, opening Facebook to find my wall plastered with angry posts from my parents. "How dare you turn my own mother against me?" Dad's post screamed. We'll contest this in court. Mom's was even worse, you manipulative little witch. You've stolen our inheritance. I felt sick to my stomach. Before I could do anything, my phone rang. It was Grandma Rose. Don't you worry about a thing, dear, she said before I could even say hello. I'm handling this. And boy, did she handle it. The next day, I got a call from Dad. He sounded defeated. Diana, he said, his voice rough. Your grandmother, she's threatening to take us to court. Says she's got evidence of harassment or something. Tell her not to do anything rash. I savored the moment for a second before responding. I think you should tell her that yourself, Dad. And while you're at it, maybe apologize for all the crap you've been putting me through. I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Finally, truly over. The next few months were like something out of a dream. Kyle and I settled into married life, figuring out our routines and quirks. We had dinner with Grandma Rose every Sunday, filling her in on our week and listening to her stories about her younger days. You know, she said one evening, a mischievous glint in her eye, I ever tell you about the time I snuck out to see Elvis in concert? Kyle and I exchanged glances, grinning. No, Grandma, I said, leaning in. Do tell. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were arguments about whose turn it was to do the dishes, stressful days at work, all the normal stuff. But coming home to Kyle, knowing I had a family that truly loved and supported me, it made everything else seem manageable. We saw Uncle Mike and his family for holidays, slowly rebuilding those family connections. It was different, but in many ways, it was better. More genuine. As for my parents and Jack, well, karma has a way of catching up with people. Despite all the money they'd thrown at Jack's grand gesture, Melissa wasn't having it. Last I heard, she'd moved out of state, wanting nothing to do with him. Jack was still living at home, having lost his golden position at an investment company and jumping from job to job. Mom and Dad were still enabling him, still treating him like the golden child. But now, they were doing it without Grandma's money to fall back on. Part of me felt sad for them. They'd lost so much, their daughter, their mother, their dignity, all because they couldn't see past their own favoritism. But a bigger part of me felt free. I no longer had to live up to their impossible standards or compete for their love. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe someday, my parents would come around. Maybe they wouldn't. But I knew one thing for sure, whatever came next, I had the strength and the support to handle it.